Hello, welcome to another edition of Lovin Sheila Shorts. I'm not going to be with you long today. I just have something briefly that I wanted to talk to you about. Like many of you, I've been watching Love Island. It gives us something to do every night. And I noticed on Love Island, there's a location within the villa that's called Soul Ties. And I'll be honest, I did not care for that name, Soul Ties. Not because I'm canceling the Islanders, but because for me, the term Soul Ties has always been a bit of a spiritual term that we've used. And so seeing it used so casually, it just kind of was like, I wish they would have done something a little different there. But because of the connotation of what soul ties are, it just made me feel like I wish they would have used a different name for that area. I'm a stickler for words, in particular names, because names reveal the character and the nature of a thing. And so likewise, when this place is called Soul Ties, it's revealing the character and the nature of that place. And in that place, it's a little hidden, it's secluded. It kind of promotes intimacy, and not intimacy where we're getting to know each other and necessarily go on a deeper level. In my opinion, it promotes physical intimacy and giving them a place to be more connected in that way. Thus, being called Soul Ties, it gave me a bit of a pause. It felt a little careless to me with the Islanders' souls, with their relationships, with their connections. And that's just how it felt for me. And maybe that's why they say soul ties. Well, soul ties is crazy because soul ties are crazy, and soul ties are not something that we want to enter into lightly. And that's why I find that title a bit disturbing or disenchanting. So let me explain this a little more. First of all, I always on this podcast, I always like to talk about the soul, because my soul can drive me nuts, okay? So that's why I don't play with the soul. That's your mind, your will, and your emotions. Getting those aligned ain't easy, okay? Take a look at Lovin Sheila, the podcast, episode 5, about aligning the heart and soul. It's hard. It's hard enough without unnecessary ties. So when we become entangled with a soul tie, it further complicates what's already complicated with our mind and our will and emotions, and trying to align those things. Aligning your heart, your emotions, your purpose is challenging enough without involving a soul tie. Why do they form? The type of soul ties that I'm talking about right now are the ones that are typically formed from physical intimacy. In physical intimacy, I believe the deposit or the exchange that happens between two people really leaves something behind and forms that tie that it's not so easy to break. It's a knot, okay? We're gonna call it a knot. Sometimes it can be very difficult to untie a knot. And that's what I would liken a soul tie to. And these ties that I'm talking about now are often formed without any covenant, without any agreement, without any commitment, without marriage, without friendship, without getting to know one another. And thus they become heavy on the soul, because I think with it there comes a lot of confusion. What am I doing? Where is this going? There's a lot of no answers, no accountability. It's just living in the moment. It becomes casual intimacy, situationships, and undefined relationships, which all of those can be emotionally, physically, mentally draining, because the mind is constantly trying to figure out what this is, trying to find the lines, determine the boundaries, understand the intentions, and see if there's even a next level to it. It offers more confusion than clarity. In fact, I would venture to say clarity is not a part of the equation. Tying your soul to a person without covenant, without that agreement, without knowing them, can lead to a long healing process, and more time needed to detach, more time needed to get back to yourself, or even to figure out, who am I? And so the reason this is important to me is because I'm always talking about doing the work. And it's important to me that we do the work before we enter into these relationships, that we know these things before we enter into it, because it's easier to do the work on the front end than it is to do the work on the back end. On the back end, there's so much healing, there's therapy, there's triggers, there's so much that happens on the back end of that. So that's why I'm always encouraging us to do it on the front end, because as much as we can avoid in doing the work and having standards and having boundaries can prevent us from being hurt in the long run and developing ties to individuals that we don't need ties to. Marriage is a place where there are soul ties. We are connected. Those two become one flesh. There's a covenant made. And in that covenant, your souls are tied. Again, they're knit together. Even in friendship, in the Bible, it talks about David and Jonathan and how their souls were knit together. Even unto death were their souls knit together. And that was just through friendship, just a love for one another, a love for another's purpose and calling, and a support. So we can have soul ties to our husbands, our wives, to our friends. And they involve a covenant, they involve a commitment, they involve a love and a care for a person. And that is God ordained, and it's lovely and it's beautiful. But what I would and what I want that all of us avoid is a soul tie that does not involve that covenant. And I'm speaking from experience. First of all, I'm divorced, and I understand why God hates divorce, because there's so much fallout from the divorce, because you have become one flesh, because you have become very intimate. Once one becomes tightly knit together, and to unweave that in ways that you didn't even know were weaved together, it's a constant unraveling in new areas, constantly opening up new wounds that you didn't know were there because they hadn't been touched, because you had been so neatly woven together. And now taking that apart leaves so many things that are raw. And so that's why it's important to do the work in advance. I'm sure we cannot prevent divorce, but I think we could enter into marriages very circumspectly, very level-headed, very clear, very knowledgeable about what we're getting into and who this person is. So that way we go in and we are prepared and we have accepted certain things. Sometimes when we kind of overlook things, we're not prepared for what it can lead to. I'll be honest, in my previous relationships, I was like, who cares what family they come from? How does that affect me? Well, I learned that those things do affect us, because it shows how they were raised, what their experiences were, how they deal with conflict, what they think is acceptable, how they move. They learn that within their families. And without doing a lot of work, oftentimes we continue that. So those things, as we were unweaving our marriage, a lot of things have shown up, and a lot of things that I could have prevented if I had just paid attention, took note, and moved based on real wisdom instead of just listening to my heart. It could have saved me a lot of trouble. And I ended my marriage by my own will. And coming out of it, there was a lot of turmoil. And the soul ties took years to break. And even now, some things still rear their ugly head. And that's why I'm talking to you all, because it's important to get ahead of these things, to learn and to understand and recognize our strengths and our weaknesses, and try and find some balance and try to really understand ourselves so we know what works for us or what we can work with. And when I started dating again after my marriage ended, because I wasn't fully healed, there were some people, some imposters that got access to my life. These people may have mirrored what I needed emotionally, maybe just a little bit, did not give me what I needed spiritually. And that ended up being a soul tie or a situationship, and return to myself. Because of the way soul ties work, it seems like so many more soul ties are not the ones of marriage and covenant, but the ones of situationships and casual dating and being misled by people and players and whatnot. Going to soul ties in the villa just didn't appreciate that term. That's all I'm saying. Why does the term matter? Why am I talking about this for 10 minutes? When I see a place on Love Island, casually calling a place Soul Ties, knowing what soul ties actually are, it feels unkind, reveals the motivation behind the show, in my opinion, which is not to help people find love, but to entice every carnal desire and temptation, leaving islanders feeling emotionally drained and in need of healing. Soul ties are not entertaining, they are not casual, they are not cute, they are spiritual, they are emotional, and they are real. I know it's entertainment, and I'm not a prude, but I just like to call it like I see it. Seeing soul ties in the show was a bad choice, and it revealed the character and the nature of the show. Though I'm talking about Love Island, I'm talking about life, because we do that same stuff. You know, we meet someone and we couple up and we sleep together before there's any type of commitment, and then we end up in soul ties. So there's a parallel there. And so what we here at Lovin Sheila want is, let's change the narrative. Let's change the direction of our relationships. Let's invest the time in getting to know people. Let's be clear about who we're linking our souls to, because there's so many imposters, there's so many folks who don't have good intentions, and we have to rightly discern that, and it takes time. It's not a matter of seeing someone, thinking they're attractive, coupling up and sleeping with them, okay? So in real life, this is what happened on Love Island, but let's make sure that that is not mirroring what's happening in our real life. What we don't want are soul ties that have no covenant. That's real talk. So thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share. And tell me what you think. How do you feel about soul ties? And I know it's a word, it's a term, but it's taken from somewhere else. And I feel like they kind of played and switched it up a little bit. So those are my thoughts. What are your thoughts? Let me know.